After an exciting weekend on Singapore, Lando Norris takes his third career win, McLaren's fifth of the season. Welcome to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Sofia Miranda, joined by Ethan, Ellis, and Christina Rutherford. And tonight we'll dive deep into Formula One's current season. So guys, starting off good, let's talk a little bit more on this Grand Prix results. So we had Lando Norris win the race 20 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen. Then, to finish the podium, Oscar Piastri. What were you guys' thoughts on yesterday's race?
Well, really, it was a really dominant race by Lando Norris, and typically when we see him win pole, he doesn't maintain the lead. I think this is the first time that he's actually led the first lap after taking the pole position, so he's been known pretty well to choke from the pole, but this is a good step in the right direction in terms of the Drivers' Championship, but he's still going to need more, which we'll talk about later. But also, a great finish for Oscar Piastri, cementing once again that McLaren probably is the best team in F1 right now. And also a pretty drama-free Singapore race. I mean, this was the first Singapore race we've seen without a safety car incident. And with how tough of a track Singapore is, this was decently surprising.
Yeah, so Lando he kept turn one that was his sixth time getting pole position and actually keeping it for once. It was a pretty boring race, but yet we had two DNFs of Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen. Daniel Ricciardo did get fastest lap, though, even though he finished P19, taking that point away from Lando. So that also messes with the Drivers' Championship, which we'll talk about. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Let's talk about a little bit about the Drivers' Championship. So we have Max at the front leading, but only 52 points away from Lando. Then we have, obviously, Charles Leclerc, and after Oscar Piastri, also a McLaren. So what are your guys' thoughts on it? And also, like, reflections?
Okay, so I think that Verstappen is still going to win the Constructors' Championship because after Daniel Ricciardo stole the fastest lap point from Lando Norris, as long as Max Verstappen finishes second behind Lando Norris, if Lando were to win every single race for the rest of the season, he would still win by 1 point in the Constructors, but I also don't think Lando will be able to win every single race, especially how competitive both cars are. So there's also Oscar, and then Ferrari hasn't been as bad as they can be, so they've got chances to win some races, and Max's car has been improving somewhat. So.
Yeah, and you know, the thing with McLaren is Lando's good, but he's not Max Verstappen levels of good.
Yeah.
He's not to the point where Max Verstappen was at the beginning of the season, where he was winning almost every race. So he's really not, I don't think, going to be able to close in on the Drivers' Championship. It's just too much of a gap that Max Verstappen built up with his previous success in the beginning of this season. But, you know, he's still only around 50 points behind Max Verstappen. I mean, you get 25 points automatically for winning a race. So if for some reason the almost impossible happens with Max Verstappen where he doesn't score any points, where he has an issue, like we saw at Australia, I mean, that's where Lando Norris needs to capitalize, and that's where, at Azerbaijan, that's where Lando Norris needed to capitalize. I mean, Max Verstappen only finished fifth. That's where Lando Norris needs to win the race because that's really his only chance to make this up. But there's still too few races left in the season, so it's going to be another Max Verstappen championship this year.
Yes, but I do think there is still a chance for if Ferrari does not mess up as much with their strategy and everything, that Charles could, depending on how Lando does, he could get close to second in the championship and possibly take second from Lando, but that all depends on how Lando does in his races.
Oh, perfect. Going a bit away from the drivers, let's talk about the Constructor Championship. So right now we have McLaren on first, 41 points ahead of Red Bull. Then we have Red Bull, obviously, and Ferrari next. So what are you guys' thoughts on it?
Right. Realistically, McLaren's done a great job in improving their cars, but in the same extent, Red Bull has really regressed, and what I mainly look at in terms of why Red Bull's not in the lead right now is Sergio Perez. He is not performing anywhere close to the level that Max Verstappen is right now, and honestly, he's a real drag on Red Bull. I mean, if you can't score a podium since April, and we're in September right now, that's ridiculous. Red Bull is the second best team in Formula One right now. Like, that should not be a stat that I have to say right now. Like, that's ridiculous that Sergio Perez is just dragging down Red Bull, and honestly, he shouldn't be there next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, that Perez shouldn't be there because he is dragging them down. And then Red Bull also, since Barcelona 2023, they made upgrades that were actually downgrades, and they're just now realizing that. So before they fix those, they're not going to keep getting points to catch up to McLaren in the constructors. And McLaren, they have two good drivers who are winning races. They've both gotten their first wins of their careers this year and multiple wins. So they're just going to keep getting points, and they're going to win the constructors, in my opinion.
Right, and they have the momentum behind them right now, so I think they're very much going to cruise to the Constructors' Championship. And one thing Red Bull kind of needs to look at now is they need to make sure they don't lose second to Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari isn't having anywhere near as consistent finishes as McLaren, but Ferrari could very well come up and snatch that second place from Red Bull. And when we're talking money, I mean, that's millions of dollars just dropping from second to third in the Constructors' Championship. That's millions of dollars that can be put to use for R&D or some other sort of purpose. So that would be huge for Ferrari and even more damaging for Red Bull.
Definitely. It's crazy to think that there are only 6 more Grand Prix left until the end of the season, isn't it? The next one is right here in the U.S. at Austin. But for now, that's all we have on F1. For Ethan, Ellis, and Christina Rutherford, I am Sofia Miranda.
Hey everybody! Thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.